Welcome to Meditation Mount and to this broadcast of Signs of Hope. It's wonderful to have you gathered from different parts of the world. And let me say a few words about Signs of Hope. We're really delighted to offer this series each month because it highlights those pioneers who are serving the common good and actively sowing seeds of a better world at every opportunity. And as we look around us, I believe it's obvious that we find ourselves in a period of transition between two ages. Two ages where there are old structures and beliefs that are dying and new ones emerging. And sometimes it is very difficult to see the hope-filled shoots of new possibilities amid the disarray of a society in upheaval and in pain and turmoil. So the intent behind this series of Signs of Hope is more than just naming the projects around the world that are giving birth to hope. There is a deeper purpose, and this is to create a portal through which the presence of fiery hope can enter and ignite the heart of our shared humanity. So this is an invitation for us to act as true Gaians, members of Gaia, and be active agents of hope whenever and wherever we find ourselves, to encourage us to step up and offer our unique gifts in response to the compelling call of the soul and the urgent needs of these times. And before we introduce our guests, what we do as a ritual is to create a field of our own hearts, to link each other through threads of love so that we weave together a matrix, a field of receptivity in which we can stand together and enter this deep exploration. So let us take a few moments to bring ourselves to a point of individual stillness. Take a few deep, slow breaths. Breathing out any tension that may exist in your physical body. And breathing in a sense of deep relaxation. Now do the same with the emotional body. On the out breath, release any tensions, anything that may be swirling as far as feelings. And on the in breath, breathe in a sense of calmness. So that the emotional waters become still. And then let's breathe out any tensions or extraneous thoughts that may be occupying our mind. Just breathe them out. And breathe in a sense of serenity so that our minds become clear, open, and liberated. And now let's stand together in the heart. So bring your focus inward into your own heart. Begin by feeling the beating of your heart as it pulses and circulates the lifeblood around what we call the universe of self, our own being. And then at the center of your heart, become aware of a flame, an eternal flame that is the fire of love. This is the same fire of love that lives at the heart of all creation. It is what joins us. It is what unites us. So let us consciously link heart to heart to heart with all those in virtual space gathered here today, and feel our individual heart expanding to become the group heart, and our individual heartbeats synchronizing so that we beat as one heart. And now into the sacred space of this one heart, we invoke the presence of fiery hope to enter. And may fiery hope ignite our ability to be a force for good in the world as we breathe together and beat together as one heart, as one humanity. So bringing our focus back to our normal waking consciousness with this added dimension of knowing that we are part of this group field of receptivity and this matrix of love. I am absolutely delighted to welcome our two guests from the River Phoenix Center for Peace Building, Cindy Grimes and Jeffrey Weisberg. Welcome, Cindy. Welcome, Jeffrey, to Signs of Hope.
Hello, Michael. So good to be with you and the community who is zooming in from around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And what a beautiful opening. I feel rested and ready to have this conversation in my fiery hearts.
Thank you. And we always start by going through a doorway. And the doorway is a question that I will pose to you both, is what is your experience and what is your relationship with this presence that we call fiery hope? You may have another name for it or know it by something different, but I would love for you to speak to that. And then once we enter that doorway, we go wherever Spirit guides us. We go wherever the need of the world calls us. So that is the question to both of you, and whoever feels like going first, please do so. But what is your experience and what is your relationship to the presence of fiery hope?
Cindy, you want to go first?
Oh, sure. I can go first. I've never used that expression, and I thought about it a lot as you were sharing and doing the introduction, this idea of fiery hope. I do have a relationship with hope, with this power and presence that some people call God, some people call the universe, this energy, infinite potential and possibility. It's, I believe, the place from which everything else emerges. It is the crucible maybe of creativity, of new possibility. Everything, I think, starts with hope. Really, if we have no hope, we have no vision, no purpose. I think that's the starting place for everything is just having that little bit, that little seed of hope. So that's what it is for me.
Thank you, Cindy.
Yeah, I experience this sense of possibility when I think about my life and our existence on this planet. And so hope to me is kind of like waiting for something to happen. And I'm sure you don't mean it that way. And that's why I love adding the fiery. But for me, it's more like love in action. What does love in action look like? And how do I be a creator of in alignment with the laws of the universe, the needs of humanity, and all living things, all living beings on this planet? And so I see it as a way of, if there's a need for something, if there's an impulse for something, what is it that helps to activate me and others in a direction of manifesting what it is that we are longing for? And so that's how the doorway that I live in as much as possible is being a creator of what may be needed or what's longing to happen.
Thank you. When I listen to both of you, I got this wonderful image of possibilities, hope. These are the seeds of the future that need to be planted now. However, the ground has to be prepared to receive them. If you put these wonderful dreams, which are compacted and focused as possibilities, if you plant these seeds on the stony ground of hatred, nothing's going to grow. So how do you cultivate and create the right conditions for hope to blossom? And I love the way that you described it, because it isn't just some disembodied presence called fiery hope. It actually is like a stream of possibility that needs to be turned on, but it only flows when love flows, or it only flows when we're activated. And so let's continue this. Is there a story about when you became activated, when something touched you and suddenly you realized that you were part of this flow, part of this allowing possibilities to take place?
I have many of those different experiences, but the one that comes to my mind first and foremost is an experience I had many years ago while I was traveling in Belize. I was alone and I was hitchhiking way out in the country, and somebody picked me up and they invited me to stay with them because they said there's going to be a big storm that night. And in fact, big lightning, thunder, rain. And then in the morning, we had to take his brother to his school, and we cross a river where the water was over the bridge in a Jeep. And so we made it across, dropped him off, and came back, and the water had risen even more. And he said, we have to walk across. And the water's up to almost my hips. And so we're walking over this bridge, just inundated by water. And we get halfway out, and he said, we have to jump in. So he jumps into the river. And I'm like, I can't keep going alone. I don't think I can turn around. I have to jump in. So I jump in, but I get sucked under. And I'm swirling and swirling and about to die, basically. I mean, I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. And I heard this voice that said, dive down. And so I did that. And I hit the current that was underneath, and it brought me up. And it was really a pivotal experience for me because I wanted to go up. Hello? That's where the air is. But this voice guided me to go down even deeper. And it is something that is informed so much of my life around moments of fear and being able to not be fearless. I don't believe in fearlessness necessarily, but what is it that enables me to go forward, or in fact, go deeper into it?
Wow. I'd like just to breathe with you. I feel like I'm underwater with you diving down. That's a very powerful story, and I'm sure it lives in your blood and bones still, lives in your cells. I can feel that. Wow.
Love
Cindy,
it.
what would
Yeah, I
be,
don't,
what's your
my
story?
story is not like that, not quite that dramatic.
Oh, it's your story. So what's yours? This is not
Well,
a
you know,
competition.
I think I'll share actually my introduction to River Phoenix, like the work of River Phoenix. I had met Hart and Jeffrey at a mutual friend's house and thought I just have to get to know these people. So went out for lunch with Hart, and she invited me to take this immersion training that they were offering. And I'm also a minister. I'm a minister in Centers for Spiritual Living and Centers for Spiritual Living. So Hart said, Center, you need to have a peace building center. I don't know what this Center for Spiritual Living is, but you need a peace building center. And I said, well, I don't know what that is, but I'm sure I'll come to the immersion and find out what that's all about. And the day before the immersion experience, a young man, a 19-year-old man, took a shotgun into the high school that my children had attended. Now, my children had all graduated by then, but it was still pretty close to that time, you know, within a couple of years of their graduating from there. Anyway, the local school, young man brings in a shotgun, and a teacher recognized him. He'd been a student at the school. And he looked at her and he said, I need help. I need help. And he dropped the weapon. It fired and actually hit a student. It was not it was a surface, you know, injury, but the whole county shut down. And it was terrifying for people all over the county. I mean, it happened in one school and people 30 miles away, the students in schools all throughout were just hiding under desks. I mean, the school is on lockdown. It was horrendous, horrific. And the teacher who talked this young man away from the ledge basically um, ended up getting in some, not trouble, but I think her efforts were not fully appreciated, perhaps. You know, there was concern that she was stepped out of her bounds of what she was supposed to do as a teacher and all these other things, which all I could see was, thank God this woman was here to talk this young man, you know, that she had the relationship with him and was able to avert really what could have been a major disaster. And so I was at the River Phoenix Center for Peace Building immersion training the next day for about a week, learning all of these principles of peace building and social emotional learning and trauma. It just really deepened my understanding of those things. And at the end of our time together, Jeffrey and Hart asked three things. If you could do three things, what would be easy for you to do with this information that we've given you? What would be a stretch? And what would be just over the moon for you? And so I thought, well, the easy thing for me to do is to take part of this curriculum that they so generously offered in social emotional learning and teach it at the prison where I was already volunteering and offering classes. That would be the easy part. The stretch would be to share these peace building principles in my own spiritual community and maybe plant seeds for spiritual communities around the country and around the world to create peace building centers as part of their outreach. But the over the moon would be to have an actual peace building center in my town, you know, Ocala, Florida, wow. Which is, how do I put this? Not particularly open to those it's a very, very conservative place. And so when you say things like peace, people can twist and misinterpret and put other things on it. And so that experience in that immersion was so much hope in the midst of this really dark, painful time. You know, as I was thinking about my grandkids now who are growing up in our very same community, and I want very, very much for my grandchildren and all the children of our community to live in a safe place, to feel like when they walk into a classroom, they don't have to worry about where they're sitting, as my kids did. My kids, as they got older and were in high school, they would choose their seats based on how close it was to the window or to a door in case they needed to escape the classroom, which is just uh, not that it just hurts. It hurts my heart. Um, it's just unconscionable for me that our children are having these kinds of concerns when they should be there, as kids to learn and enjoy life. And so I just felt very moved to do something within my own community, and ended up starting a peace building center here in Ocala, my Over the Moon, which is still in process. But we are very much interested in working toward getting these peace building principles out in the world, in our day-to-day lives, in the schools, in our local criminal justice system, in workplaces, just wherever people are open to hearing these ideas and new ways of doing business.
Wow. Thank you, Cindy. What moved me about your story was that you said when the shotgun went off accidentally or inadvertently because it was dropped on the floor, it caused students 30 miles away to hide under their desks in fear. And I had this sense of this blanket of fear stymieing the creative spirit of our humanity, of our young people. So fear actually paralyzes and blocks and separates. And I know the work that you're doing in the peace building is dealing with real live emotions. And so I'd love to get into that in a moment, but I would also like to know how you continue to stay centered when you're working in communities that may be hostile, or you're working with communities of people who have a history of being, well, historical harm, I guess we could say. Mm-hmm. So how do you stand true inside the field that is so much in need of what you're offering? I'll ask this to both of you.
Sure. So do you want to go first, Jeffrey?
Go ahead, Cindy.
Okay, well, what I do is my own spiritual practice, right? I am continually coming back to that presence, and I have a practice of mindfulness and meditation and spiritual study. I have my people, my tribe is really probably the biggest thing, because there are moments, of course, when I feel hopeless. There are those times. I got over COVID for the second time in August, and there was a time when I was watching the news and seeing all these horrible things happening around me, and I thought, just take me. This just isn't working for me anymore. This place. I'm ready to check out. If COVID is going to do it, let's do this quick. I actually got to. It was that dark of a place, and I'm just blessed to have wonderful people around me that I could call when I'm in that mode, which doesn't almost hardly ever happens, but it does happen. It happens to all of us, I think. And to have your go-to people that you can share with, people who are like-minded, like this forum itself. As I read what this group was about, that gives me hope. Just knowing that there are other people in the world that see the need, and instead of shrinking back from it, are diving into it and saying, let's address what's going on here, because it's not going to go away on its own. So we need to get the courage, and learn as much as we can about these ideas of peace building, which is still, fairly new, and go on in and do what I think is at least my purpose in the world. I feel very much that I was born for this time, and to use the gifts and the things that I have learned and my own experiences to help others come through it as well, come through the difficult times.
Thank you. Yeah, I know for me, it's responding to the call. It's both the compelling call of the soul, is like what I came in to do, but also the urgent need of our times, and is bringing those two together in response. Thank you, Cindy. Jeffrey.
Yeah, I so agree with community, and I have been married and with my beloved wife, Heart Phoenix, for 28 years. And that is foundational, incredible to have that longevity and play and laughter and seriousness with the work that we're doing. Um, and also there's an amazing teaching in the Course in Miracles, and it says nothing real is threatened, nothing unreal exists. Therein lies the peace of God. Nothing real is threatened, nothing unreal exists. Therein lies the peace of God. And that informs me deeply. So when my mind starts to chatter and I get either jealous or worried or stressed or fearful, um, oftentimes that comes back in. Thankfully, it comes in as a reality check, which is what I believe. I really believe that all of that mishigas, all of that worry, some people call it the monkey mind, is not real. And so when I'm one of my other spiritual teachers, Mickey Singer, from the Temple of the Universe, written a couple wonderful books. He talks about having right understanding. And so that right understanding helps inform me and bring me back to like a homeostasis, brings me back to a place of solidity in the midst of a lot of stuff that is going on in the planet. Um, I blend all that with some good self-care. I live in the country, not quite the background that you have, but I live in a place that I'm afforded this reflection with the deer and the bald eagles and the sandhill cranes and just in the fireflies and the beauty. So that wild spaces, nature spaces is one of those things that helps me to remember, to ground, and to be fed in a really, really important way to help me sustain the work that I do in the world with some of those communities and people and interactions that are very painful for some.
Well, thank you both, because what you've just described is a practice of coming back to center, coming back to a truth, not as a belief, but as your relationship with what for you is your true center. And I believe that this is going to be more and more called for as the world gets a little wobblier, as things start to break down more. If we move outwards into the fear, and if we move outwards into all of the turmoil, it spins more quickly. When we come back to the center, there is a still point in like the eye of the storm, and it's how to stand there to do the good work. And it's also interesting that we're in the sun sign of Libra at the moment, which is all about balance and equilibrium and poise. And what I moved to do now, because I'm a very good mutual friend, Dot Maver, sent me a copy of the book that you use at the River Phoenix Peace Building Center, which is The Little Book of Police Youth Dialogue. And so before I go into that, I just wanted to highlight that Libra is also a time when we have to look at what is just, what is justice. And in 2 days' time, we have a full moon meditation in the sun sign of Libra, and we're going to be using an image. And I'd like to have us just take in the energy of this image just to fuel the conversation that we're going to have. So Victoria's going to very kindly put this image up on the screen. Justice, blindfold, impartiality, sword of truth, scales of justice, weighing right or wrong. This is the energy present now that we can utilize. So I'd like us just to breathe in the power of this image, and then for us to take that energy and go into an exploration of the good work you're doing. So this is Libra. Thank you, Victoria.
Fun little aside, Michael.
Yeah.
You know that Jeffrey and I are both Libras. We just had our birthdays.
No, really. Well, then it makes sense that you're doing what you're doing.
Isn't it funny? And River Phoenix Center for Peace Building has drawn all these Libra people. We just had a little group celebration yesterday. There's a
Well,
lot of us in this work.
I
I
isn't.
love that image, Michael. Thank you. I've never seen that. And, I just want to speak to that a little bit. So Cindy and I are trainers of restorative justice. And I've been a certified mediator for about 25 years and literally have facilitated some thousands of people in various forms of conflict. And what I believe is that most people, in fact, aren't that skillful at navigating conflict and transforming it, that we kind of push it aside, we ignore it, we might attack it, we could fall silent. And so it is essential in our time of evolution that people learn the skills and be guided by those who are able to stand in the fire of misunderstanding and disagreement. And that image is really powerful. I love that there is a black or brown skinned woman. She's holding a sword and the scales of justice. And in our trainings, we always ask, what does justice mean to you? And everyone has some facet, some distinction around what it is and why it's important. And the relevance of that is that it is in the eye of the beholder. We have these mandatory minimums, sentencing guidelines. We have kind of a structure in our criminal justice system, but it grossly misses the mark to help the healing process of what true justice is meant to be and what its promise is. And the sword that she's holding is really important in my interpretation, that we have to be able to wield the sword skillfully. And most commonly, it's in truth telling. It's in communication. It's in vulnerability. And if we don't open our hearts and kind of allow ourselves to deeply hear and receive what another person's experience is and what the impact is on them, then we will not probably have the truest possibility of justice. And so it's some work that we are really focusing on and dedicating our life to elevate people's consciousness to the potential within that vulnerable space of conflict. And we have many stories that we can share, but that's what comes to my mind, Michael, when you share that, a powerful image of justice and having a woman and a woman of color to be holding it, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done for this level of healing and transformation.
Mm. Thank you. Cindy, what does the image evoke for you?
I don't know that I can say anything more than what Jeffrey has said. I love that she's a curvy brown skinned woman. I love that. She's got a little curve to her. But you just said it so beautifully, Jeffrey. The sword and all of the metaphor that it holds, and the scales of justice is just beautiful. I don't know where you got that image, but I love it. I think we should use it in our training.
We want it.
I'm sure
we want to borrow it.
I know Victoria can send it to you. So absolutely. So this leads us into the work that you're doing, because you don't just do this in nice, safe spaces. You do this real time in places where it's hurting, where the relationships are broken. And I noticed the third chapter in the book, the little book of youth police dialogue. It's like policing in the era of George Floyd. We're talking about how to do the work now, given the current situations. I'm sure things have changed. Things have always been tough, but somehow things have come to a head. What is the work that you're doing now that can help break through and do the healing? What are the stories that you're experiencing now? Because what I'd love for the people, all of us gathered here today, is to hear what's possible. We talked about possibilities and hope is possibility. What have you noticed that is possible and how is it showing up?
Well, so much of the work is focused around how do we see each other. Now it's a stretch to see each other as the beloved, but that's my that's my dream, that we can humanize one another, beyond the badge, beyond the skin, beyond the harm that we may have caused to another. And so creating what I think is powerful for the people that are on this call, and so many people dedicated to this work, is creating the space through an intention of vulnerability and to be seen, known, and understood. And one of our very first police youth dialogues, a young person, teenager, 15, 16, he said, "What is one of the most difficult, challenging things that you've ever overcome?" This is an African-American kid asking the police. And 3 officers responded. And one said that when she was younger, she was in the back seat of her car with her parents, and her father was beating her mother and kicked them all out of the car and drove off and left them. Another officer shared that he was sexually molested as a young person. This is a big, burly cop. You don't share that kind of thing typically, not someone that would. And the third officer shared that one of his younger brothers accidentally shot and killed his other younger brother. And the space in that room was, like the most holy moment where everyone was in stillness, everyone was connected, everyone was in awe, because there was a level of transparency and vulnerability that is not normal. We're not in Kansas anymore, Mm-hmm. So I believe that the more of those kinds of opportunities and spaces that we can create and hold for people to engage in difficult conversations is one of the most important factors to change people's minds and experiences with the other. And so it does require a certain skill set and capacity for people to be quiet and hold the space and not keep interrupting and filling it. And so that's part of the work that we do. And there's many different ways that people can grow that skill set. But an interesting invitation, Thanksgiving is coming up. For one, we're vegan, and so I encourage everyone to get a tofurkey and try that out. But as important as that is to ask a deep question, ask a meaningful question of your family or community, whoever you're with, and just see what happens. Don't go into politics. Do it something of the heart that would inspire a new kind of conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeffrey. Wow. Cindy.
You said so many things. I'm trying to think, where do I want to spin from? But I come from a family of law enforcement officers. My dad was a police officer. My husband retired as a captain. My daughter is now a police officer, and there were uncles and cousins, and so as a brown skinned person in a family of law enforcement officers in a very conservative community, it's just fascinating that I'm in the position that I'm in. As I said, I feel like I was born for this. My hope comes in this work. The deepest part of it, I think, came from bringing those men together in circle and diving into their traumas, social emotional learning. How do you handle difficult emotions? So many of those men said, if I had just learned these principles when I was a kid, I wouldn't be here. So that is also part of my motivation, is to see that people get these basic principles, that we become as literate with regard to peace building as we are with reading, with mathematics, with things that some people will never use. But we all need to know what to do when someone betrays us, right? When there's need for forgiveness, when that conflict comes up and there's that argument and needs that are unmet. It would serve all of us to know how to do these things. And it's not rocket science. No. It really is just about conducting yourself, as Jeffrey said, creating that safe space of the circle, which is where the skill of the facilitator comes in, is to be that safe place for people so that they can show up in their authenticity. It takes courage to be able to speak. It takes courage to listen. And the facilitator guides that process by creating that space and being that example. Right? That is the biggest skill, I think, of the facilitator. And to be okay with a little bit of chaos, as Jeffrey said, you never know what somebody's going to say or how somebody's going to take this, or so to just be able to be with the grief, with the anger, with all of those feelings, which means again the facilitator has to have some of their own kind of grounding and stability themselves, right? To be the calm in the eye of the storm. So as things are swirling, you're not getting pulled here and there and all these different directions. So it's profound work. It's probably, and I'm a minister, I think it's among the most spiritual things that I do, is to sit in circle with people who are very, very different from one another, have had very different life experiences, like the men in the prison, literally from 18 to 80. That's the age range. Black, white, Jew, Christian, atheist, right? Everything. And yet we can find our commonality. Right. We can find that place, that fiery hope in the heart that we all share. And that is the magic of Circle and the work that we do. Now, I'll qualify by saying the men that come into the Circle at the prison where Jeffrey and I were volunteering are there on a voluntary basis. No one is making them come. When people come for a police youth dialogue, they're there as volunteers. Nobody is making them come. So we don't have those same kind of dynamics as you might have in a restorative justice circle where, a harm has been committed. But even then, people have to want to be there to make things better.
Yes.
Right? They have to want to make things better. Otherwise, we would be bringing people into the circle that could cause more harm.
Yes.
And that's certainly not anything that we want to do.
Wow, thank you. You've both given very powerful messages. And in listening to you, I go back to what you said. People need to be seen, loved, and heard. And it's as though you're doing what Martin Luther King talked about, creating beloved community. Or in the Buddhist terminology, bodhisanga, it's you're creating a community, a family of spirit in which we can be our authentic selves. We don't have to hide and play games behind a badge or behind whatever facade that we're hiding behind at the moment. How do we step out and meet each other heart to heart, human to human, with all the harm that's been done and all the differences that have so far created barriers? This is a huge work of not just restorative justice, but restoring our humanity, our civility. And so I am deeply grateful to you both and for all connected with the River Phoenix Peacebuilding Center. And I'm wondering, what else would you want to say to all of us gathered on this call today? What is the most important thing that we could keep in heart and keep in mind as we go into the coming days and months, where things are probably going to get a little tougher on the planet, where the polarization is going to get a little stronger? What advice do you have from your deep experience that will help us navigate through the polarities and to walk this path into our beloved community?
I'll go ahead.
Well,
Unless you want to go ahead, Jeffrey.
um, I'm reading a book right now. Here it is. I'll give it a little plug. It's called The Way Out, How to Overcome Polarization. And one of the amazing things that he's talking about in there is the need for the group that you're in to have conversations around the contradictions of your worldview and the inconsistencies, because my group is right. Obviously, my group is the best, my group is right, and they're wrong. And that kind of thinking and that kind of behavior, and the way in which we may demonize or separate ourselves from the other, is will only lead, I believe, to actually our demise. So how is it then that we can extend a hand, we can extend a heart, we can extend an ear, particularly to those that are different from us? And in order to do that, we have to self-reflect. We have to be deeply honest with the contradictions and the ways in which we impact our world and our fellow human beings and the environment. And then with that, how do we have humor and humility to engage with others? Because, water, climate, political dynamics, race is some of the most challenging work that we're doing personally and in our organization. And it's along with climate, I think it's the most important work that we need to be doing is healing the racial disparity, the divide, the trauma that has been experienced by so many people that we live with and live around in our communities. And so that requires a great willingness to be in the hot seat and to listen deeply to people's experience. Because if we don't acknowledge or don't validate people's experience, then there will never be the possibility of repair in relationships. So it's essential that we listen with humility and honesty and don't defend.
Thank you. So, Cindy, what wise counsel do you have born of your experience?
I think it was my biggest paradigm shift in attending that immersion. And that was a quote, and I can't remember it exactly, but you know it, Jeffrey, the Dominic Barter quote, that we are not safer by isolating ourselves. As we come into conflict, I think for most of us, our natural kind of response is to run from it, to defend. Let's build taller, wider walls, and protect ourselves. And what that actually does is endanger us. We become more, and there's more and more danger as we isolate ourselves from other people. So my counsel is to be curious, is to take the defensiveness out of the picture and just be curious. I'm right now teaching from a book called See No Stranger by Valerie Kaur. And it's profound. It really is about that agape kind of love, the Martin Luther King in creating the beloved community. And so she comes from an activist background where we need to fix everything out there. And I'm from a more the spiritual aspect, which is we fix what's inside and then the outside changes. Well, those don't have to be exclusive, right? We can work on the outside and work on the inside, and they inform one another. And so the quote of hers that I think is so powerful was, what if this darkness, this time that we are in, this dark time, is not the darkness of the tomb, but the darkness of the womb?
Oh,
And I love that. You know, we know that birth is messy, it's painful, it's not fun in the moment, but there is a gift, you know, that comes from it. There's that new birth, there's that new endeavor, there's whatever it is, whether you're physically birthing a person or an idea or a movement. I think we can expect those same kinds of things. So we as peace builders, I believe we are the midwives of this process. And so we help people breathe, and we help people know when to push, and we're there to hold them up and support, and know the time when we need support ourselves. We are part of that circle as well in human beings. And so having our own, as I said before, our tribe and our place where we can rejuvenate as well.
wow, that's beautiful. I love from the tomb to the womb. And I'm thinking earlier you talked about letting go of expectations, but what we do when we're pregnant with hope is we're expectant because we're expecting. We we're about to give birth, and yet in order to give birth, we have to deal with creating the right conditions for birth. And as you were speaking about there is no stranger, I was thinking of the classical, the pupil says to the master, "Master, how shall we treat others?" The master looks at the pupil and said, "There are no others."
Mm. Yes. We are all teachers, we are all students, we are all in this circle, we are all
Yeah.
part of that fiery hope.
Well, this has been really deep and continues to be a deep conversation. I'm deeply grateful that you're able to help ignite this fiery hope within the field. And I'll just do one more round. Is there anything else that's on your heart that needs to be shared before we go into this final blessing together? Anything else? If you've said everything, that's fine, but let's open the space in case.
I want to say that this gathering gives me hope. Knowing that you are doing this work and that there are people who are tuning in from all over the planet. You know, my own family doesn't quite get what I do. So it's really wonderful to be among other people that see the possibility. And that's just some of the most gratifying and hopeful things that happen. Every time I do a training with River Phoenix, I'm close to tears by the time we're done, because we've created this beautiful community, these lovely people. And I know that we can create that anywhere we go. Yeah. That's the reality.
Yeah.
That's the real life, when we feel that oneness and we can see ourselves in others. That's the truth. The rest is the illusion.
Yes. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Jeffrey.
Thank you, Cindy. Beautiful. I love you, Cindy. I love working with you and co-creating. Mm-hmm. You know, I lived at an ashram for a year and a half or so called Kripalu. And the Amrit Desai was the guru there. And he said, gratitude is the chalice of abundance. Mm. And I just love that experience of seeing, even if it's messy or seeing necessarily a problem, when I focus on what is right and good and what is possible, that it seems to keep returning back to me as a wave in the midst of anything else. So gratitude, appreciation is one of the most powerful and simple tools that we can share and give with each other as a way of blessing. So that's my blessing. So Michael, I appreciate the work that you're doing in the world and holding this center, this space for people to have hope through inspiration and learning and understanding and the stillness within. So I love you. I'm so grateful to be introduced to you and your work through Dot Maver, one of my dearest friends, and just gratitude for you and your team.
Thank you. And here at Meditation Mount, just let me say our contribution to peace building is there are three principles we believe are necessary for a new world, more just and joyful world to be built upon. And those are the three principles of essential divinity, goodwill, and unanimity. And this basically says essential divinity, each one of us in our heart has a flame of or a spark of the Creator. We each are fractals of this one life. So we're joined as sisters and brothers by the fact that inside of us is an aspect of the one. And then the principle of goodwill, which is what you mentioned earlier, love in action. And the natural urge of the soul, when we're free from fear and free from distortion, the natural urge is to love and give. And then the principle of unanimity that says that there is a pre-existing state of cohesion and interdependency, and we're part of the seamless matrix of life. So we believe that having those three principles in play and embodied and lived gives us the groundwork. Rather than a religious belief, we're saying that these principles, once they're embodied, actually call in by themselves a new way of being together. So what I'd like to do is to then move now into this time of blessing so that we take a deep breath together. We express our gratitude to each other and to that one life that permeates every single one of us and lives at the heart of every single one of us. And then together we breathe out, and let's do this in 3 waves. We breathe out a blessing of hope. And I'll sound the Tibetan bowl, and as we sound it 3 times and send out the wave of hope, we see this fire of hope entering the hearts of all of our human family and blessing all creatures, but awakening us to the reality of who we are, the sovereignty of our essential nature. So let us stand together in the group heart. Take a deep breath, and then let's send out into the ethers blessings of love and blessings of fiery hope. And we send a second wave and see it circulating around the planet, because we are part of a great circulation called the Great Chain of Blessing. And we send out a third and final wave from the love that burns inside our heart as a blessing to all beings who live upon our beloved planet. And may we carry with us the fire of hope into the coming days and months, so that we could be a beacon of inspiration, quietly if needed, more loudly if needed, but authentically. So thank you again, Jeffrey, and thank you, Cindy, for your presence and participation. And thank you to everybody on this call. We are building the beloved community together, day by day. So thank you, everybody. And we bid you farewell from Meditation Mount. Blessings on the work of peace building.